And if you call it out, you're labeled a racist. The reality is this. Black people don't want to live around black people. I don't want to live around a bunch of black people. I move to neighborhoods where it's majority white because I know I'm safe. Now, this is uncomfortable reality that no one wants to say, so I'll say it for them. Black people commit a lot of crimes. A majority of the violent crime committed in the United States is committed by a small percentage of people, and they tend to be black men. Look, the reality is the reality. People don't want to say it.
Going from virtue signaling being the norm and being praised to now vice signaling being the norm and being praised.
White people have been under attack for years. It's been systematic racism. As much as black people and people of color want to talk about systematic racism in the United States, it's quite the opposite. They get preferential treatment when it comes to getting a job, when it comes to getting into colleges. White people, on the other hand, have been getting attacked relentlessly.
You use the N-word quite frequently. Well, why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist.
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, well, if you use the N-word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so we're going to get into this Piers Morgan debate, and this one's going to be quite racially charged, if you will. This lady, Shiloh Hendricks, she was confronted, if you will, after calling a 5-year-old kid a racial slur, a pejorative, if you will, used against black people in this country. And I don't think that word should be used. A lot of people there are talking about free speech and all this other stuff. I don't think it has anything to do with free speech. I can't stand the free speech argument, to be honest with you, on this one. There are things that we just shouldn't say, but we are seeing a grave double standard when it comes to this issue, but we'll get into all that. But before we get into this debate, y'all do me that big favor. Smash that like button for me. I need y'all's help on that. Smash the like button. Subscribe if you're new around here. Follow this channel. Stay tuned to my regular videos. I just do these for fun on the weekend because I enjoy doing these, but watch my regular videos. We read the news, we go over the manipulations, and we figure out how we're being lied to by the corporate press. That's what we do around here. We read the news and give our opinion on that, as the title of the channel says. But y'all share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. That would be greatly appreciated. We now have memberships. You can sign up to join the channel. But without any further ado, let's jump right into this, y'all.
What you've just said to me bears any relation to white unity or anything that you've just said. She's just a racist. End, isn't she? You wouldn't dispute that.
It's not about her. It's not about her. It's about
it is about her
coming together and supporting another white person. And it doesn't matter.
Why would you want to support a white racist?
Because I want to support free speech, and you cannot have free speech in the country.
No, that's fine. You can support free speech, but you also have to be accountable for what you say. She is, I mean, would you use the N-word out of interest?
Yes.
You would?
Mm-hmm. I do, quite frankly.
You use the N-word quite frequently. Well, why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist. Are you?
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, well, if you use the N-word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shiloh Hendricks is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away. So you were saying Carmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter. That's a different.
Sorry, but just to be
thing.
clear, you just said to me you use the N-word regularly. In what context? Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the N-word? When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist?
Correct.
Well, do you understand that makes you a despicable human being?
I guess so. I don't really care. I mean, why are we not talking about Shiloh Hendricks? Why are we talking about?
Well, actually, I think you've moved it on in this debate very quickly to your own racism, which explains why you've supported her in public and why you've got all these views. You see no problem with a woman shrieking the N-word repeatedly because you yourself are a despicable racist, and you've just proudly admitted that with a smug grin on your face, which is pretty horrifying, actually, for most people to have to watch. And shame on you. You're entitled to do it, and I'm entitled to call you despicable.
Well, shame on white people for allowing themselves to be systematically discriminated against in the United States. This is our country. This is a country that should be.
What do you mean your country?
because I'm white and my
Well, there are no
ancestors-
black people in American history. Is that what you're saying? That they've all just landed in America, invading you, your white country? Is that your position?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they were brought here technically.
My God,
We
do
didn't.
you understand how dumb you sound?
This is stupid. This is stupid and racist. And at some point, we have to ask ourselves: do we want to reward
Truly.
this kind of disgusting behavior by platforming it?
I don't disagree, Mark.
historically-
Listen, I didn't know she was going to say that. I don't disagree with you.
No. Yeah. I'm with you. I don't think you knew ahead of time. I'm saying at this moment, someone who's saying technically black people brought up. No, technically Africans were stolen, enslaved, and they built this country. And the idea that you can justify calling a baby the N-word by saying that white people are losing the country is absurd. It's morally bankrupt, and it's honestly besides the point. I mean, all these are just distractions from the fact that she wants to justify dehumanizing and even animalizing a small black child. It's disgusting.
What is it?
Yeah, I never
it.
said that. I never said that.
No, but you may as well have done because you're just an unashamed.
That's the implication of your.
proud
That's the
racist. Let me
implication
bring
of
it.
your-
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get my position on out there right quick. I think race should not matter at all. The skin color, what the hell is the difference? Who gives a damn what their skin color is, for crying out loud? Now, these people, okay, this is all ridiculous. We're going to address all of this, but right off the top, like I said, I'm going to get my position out there. I don't think skin color matters whatsoever to me, but other people feel differently. I have been on a mission my entire life to change the definition of the N-word. I don't think it should be used to describe a skin color, for crying out loud. And it should be used as a pejorative for anybody who's a POS. You know, white people can be an N-word, Chinese people can be an N-word, blah, 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 blah. You get it. Anybody and everybody can be an N-word. It depends on the character of the person that is being called the N-word. But we don't use that word, do we? No, because it has been racially charged over the years, and it was used as a pejorative to describe a certain sect of Americans. They're not African Americans, they're Americans. Now, to address this guy right here, I can't stand. This guy is a racist. As a matter of fact, we can't deny that. He's coming in and talking about, oh, well, black people were stolen and we built this country. That is a lie on both fronts. No, black people were not stolen. Read your history, my guy. You guys were enslaved by your own people, then sold. Right? None of it was right. None of it was good. But that's also ignoring the fact that, hey, hang on just a second. There are more slaves alive today than there ever have been. Now, the opposing argument to that might be, well, there's a lot more people. Yes, but does that matter? No, because white people have been slaves. Jewish people have been slaves. Black people have been slaves. Chinese people are slaves. Indian people are slaves. You get the point, right? We've all been enslaved, just about everybody. The Jewish people have about the only right to claim oppression. Like seriously, they've been oppressed for almost the entirety of human history. They're the only ones that really have that right to say we are the most oppressed out of anything. Now, getting on the side of this Shiloh Hendricks lady, right, and trying to get behind that, no, come on, guys. This is defeating the purpose here. Look, if we're going to fight against racism, we don't fight fire with fire when it comes to this. But, however, this is what's happening. This is definitely what's happening. We're not saying this is a good thing. I'm saying this is not how we fight this fight. We need to take this race nonsense and eliminate it completely. The only way to do that is by just completely stop discussing race at all, right? It just really needs to come to a stop. I was brought up in an era where race relations were probably at their best, right? We went to school, everybody was mixed. You know, we were all mixed in with each other. In other words, we all had groups of friends that some were white, some were black, some were Mexican, blah, 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 blah. You get it. I never viewed my black friends as black friends. Essentially, they were just my friends. These people, they weren't African Americans. I've always questioned that. Like, hang on, weren't you born in America? Haven't you lived here your entire life? You've never even been to Africa. Why do we use African American? That's ridiculous, right? Like, because you have people from South Africa who are South African Americans and they're white. So that never made logical sense to me. The other term, calling them black, that never made logical sense to me neither, because look at them. They are not black, just like I am not white. That is the language that we use, though, so we just kind of go with that. But there is a logical disconnect there from reality. And I think we get a lot of logical disconnects from reality when it comes to language. And, you know, those are hurdles we have to jump over. But I think this lady just coming out and admitting this, I use the N-word all the time. Why would you do this? This is ridiculous. But, you know, that is ignoring the fact that, yes, folks, there are racists out there. They exist. There are a lot more black people that are racists. They're more open about their racism, I should say, than there are white people. White people get shamed into oblivion for being racists, and for good reason, right? However, black people absolutely do not. To come out and say black people built this country, that is a blatant lie. This country was founded by white Europeans that came to this country and was started by those people, built by those people, those settlers, those colonists, if you will. This was built up. Now, that is not to speak that these African people that were shipped over here, that were purchased, which is despicable in my opinion, and that is a stain on our history, folks, but they also had a hand in building this country, so he's partially right? They had a hand, but we did it together. We all did it together, right? Some of these people, sure, they were forced to do that. And once again, that is a stain. That is a nasty stain on our history. But to take and say that black people built America, that's just a racist lie. That's all that is. That is meant to divide people. That is all that is meant to do. And when you're going to support that kind of language, I'm sorry, you're going to get called a racist, in my opinion. Let's keep going.
Myron Gaines, because you've been smirking and laughing, what's funny about any of this?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting that you guys want to virtue signal and, you know, wag the finger and say she's a racist and everything else like this.
No, she admitted she's a racist.
Well, let me
I'm not wagging a finger at anybody.
She self-identified as a racist.
But Myron, with respect, Myron, I don't need to wag a finger when somebody says, yeah, I'm racist. I use the N-word against black people. I don't care. That's a racist. I'm not wagging any finger. I'm not accusing anybody. She is admitting it proudly. Even you can't defend that, surely.
Everybody is racist to some degree. The reality is it depends on, a lot of people want to be politically correct. A lot of people want to sit there and say, I'm not racist at all. We all have biases. We all have stereotypes. We all make jokes. We all are racist to some degree. Now, how racist you are is a whole other situation, but everyone is racist. That's number one. Next thing I want to say, see, I think this Shiloh, Hendricks, and Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. And that bigger problem is what I call systemic organization. And what I mean by this is, for decades, we've had black people literally running around with black supremacy, committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame the system for it. For example, George Floyd, criminal. Ferguson, criminals. Freddie Gray, criminal. A lot of these people are criminals, and what ends up happening is they challenge the police officer, they get into a physical altercation, things go left, they die, something happens, use of force is utilized, and then they want to cry about the result, when in reality, it's not the police killing black people, it's black people killing black people. And if you want to talk about black on white violence, black people kill white people 2 times as much. And on top of that, most of the shootings in America, a lot of the times, are white cops killing other unarmed white men. So this whole systemic racism or police brutality, or, oh, it's all so messed up. The reality is this. Black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people crackers without being challenged back. And quite frankly, white America's had enough of it, and the chickens have come to roost. Now, look, am I saying that's awesome? Am I saying that's great? No, but for literally the better part of almost 2 decades since the Obama era, we've had to have BLM and liberalism shoved down our throats, and quite frankly, we're all tired of it.
Right, but just to be clear, you would have no problem with one member of this panel openly saying she uses the N-word at black people with impunity and is proud of being a racist. You have no problem with that?
My worldview on the protection of the First Amendment and freedom of speech overrides my personal feelings. She has the right to say
That's fine.
it.
You can support the First Amendment, but you can also have a personal view about what she said.
My feelings are irrelevant. The Constitution is the Constitution. That's what matters.
Oh, that's
And
fascinating. Hold on. So when it comes to chastising Black Americans about their behavior, about calling white people crackers, as you say, about their moral claims about the racist system, you can levy a judgment against Black Americans for all the things they do. But when it comes to this woman saying the N-word, and this other woman endorsing it and saying that she herself uses the N-word, now all of a sudden we can only talk about the Constitution and the legal right. We can't offer any moral judgment against it. That's disingenuous. And it's as the only Black American up here, that's quite frustrating to hear.
Here's the thing. If you want to be soft and get offended by that, that's your problem, not mine.
Let me ask Ricky.
We're not even.
Let me ask Ricky. Ricky,
this isn't about being soft any more than when you were desperately saving these white people.
Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about I didn't articulate. Hold on. Let me finish, Myron. Let me speak and then I'll let you respond. Myron, sure. I didn't articulate any sensitivity here. What I said, in the same way that you levied a judgment against Black people, I'm levying one against the claims you're making. I'm no more sensitive than you were when you made your claim. I'm simply saying I disagree with you. And to immediately jump to you're being sensitive is just a distraction. I'm making an argument here. Just respond to my argument.
No. Personally, I think Myron's totally correct about everything he just said, right? They are a little bit sensitive about that. They go, oh my gosh, you called me the N-word, blah, 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 blah. You're going to get canceled into oblivion. Blah, blah. But you can call white people crackers all day long, and we don't get offended at all. Like, it's not about the First Amendment, though. Like, let's get that out of the way, because the First Amendment has nothing to do with morality. First of all, right? Nothing to do with morality. There are things that we should not say. Doesn't mean we can't say them, but once again, if somebody wants to use one of those pejoratives against somebody, then, hey, we should all as a group come together and say that was wrong. It was wrong to do that. It's wrong for you to call a white person a cracker. It's wrong for you to call a Black person an N-word. It's just wrong all the way around. Let's just get that out of the way right quick. But I think the point that Myron is getting at here is we have had an unequal application of morality when it comes to the N-word and cracker and blah, 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 blah. You get it, right? When it comes to the racism, there has been an unequal application all the way across the board for the past 30 or 40 years. Now, a lot of people, they might make the argument, well, that's just justice, if you will, for the decades of oppression that the Black community saw, you know, pre-1960, 1965, before the Civil Rights Movement. Right, the Civil Rights Movement was one of the most massive achievements in this country has ever made, in my opinion. That was as probably the most massive achievement this country has ever made, because before that, segregation and all that nonsense, I don't understand the thinking of those folks from back then. How can you think that one race is superior over another? I mean, this goes all the way across the board. You know, this isn't just all whitey over here, right? We have the Japanese thought that way, the Chinese think that way. There's been several races pretty much all throughout history that have thought at some point or another that they were superior to another. I don't understand that. I never have, and I don't think I ever will understand why they think that way. I just don't get it. I mean, I understand that they do think that way. I just don't get the reasoning. Why do you think you're superior? Go ahead and explain that out for me, because if we're basing this on like physical statistics, if you will, Black people are actually superior to everybody else. They have more muscle mass, blah, 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 blah. You get it, right? I sure hope you guys get it. If not, go look up the stats. I'm not going to break all that down right here. But you know, there's a lot more metrics to that. You know, you've got brain capacity and all that other stuff. This is why I say I just don't get it, because we're all created equal here. I don't care what you think. I don't care how you end up, right? We don't all end up on equal footing, but we all are created equally. And that should be our basis for how we treat each other. Right? Just because you get a higher status than anybody else doesn't mean you get to be treated differently. Right? We all should treat each other equally. Right? But this has not been the case historically. We had caste systems, class systems, blah, 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 blah. You get it, right? And I don't understand that thinking. How can you think because, way back in the day you were a nobleman, you get to disrespect a commoner? I never understood that. Why do you think you're better than somebody else? Because you were born into wealth? Because you were born into money? You were born into a certain class? Never understood that. And I think we need to shed that type of thinking. Once again, folks, and we are getting away from that. We are evolving slowly over time, but, it's not going away. It's taking a very, very long time. And when we have situations like this, where this lady, let's be honest, okay, despicable. She shouldn't have said that to a child, for crying out loud. She should be shamed into oblivion for doing so. But the rest of it, when this guy was getting in her face, pressing her, say the word, pride kicks in at that point. Then she's going to do it. She has no other choice. Right? When pride's involved. I'm not saying she could have just walked away from that situation, which is absolutely what she should have done. But once again, cooler heads don't always prevail. She was pressed into repeating that pejorative over and over and over again. She could have just said it once, sure. I'm not saying I agree with that. She said it several times, right? But she was pressed into doing that. Let's be fair about that, okay? Let's just be fair about that. That guy was pressing her to say that. Let's keep going.
Your last words on this.
Okay. Because I never got to respond to Myron's other.
The thing with tribalism, it's a natural human instinct. Like, we are literally designed to want to be in communities and want to be a part of a set of community because it ensures our survival. It's been that way since the beginning of time. So the thing is that people are typically going to align with people that share similar features, and that's why we have the tribalism we have going on right now. So the problem is it's not going to go anywhere. I think the problem is that we've had this penting up for literally decades, and this has been a response to it. You have people that are coming out and supporting someone who you guys might deem as a terrible racist, but I think it's also very important to understand how we got here, because if we're going to look at the smaller problem, we can't look at the bigger problem, and it's what I said before, unchecked systemic.
All right, Mark Lamont Hill, your last words on this.
This repeated use of the word, I think, first of all, I want to just register that as offensive, particularly as someone who doesn't identify as a member of that community and who is not, right? I think that's incredibly
I'm the definition of African-American. I'm the definition of African-American.
And troublesome, and to as a Sudanese American or an outsider who's using African American, the very technical term, the same way that Elon Musk is an African American, I think it is a bit disingenuous. But the bigger issue here, I think, is that this idea of equating of one side to the other side often loses track of this issue of power. To use his example, when Black people stand up and say, "Hey, let's build our own stuff. Hey, let's have a Black power movement," that is not the same as a white power. I'll let you speak uninterrupted. Let me finish, please, my Sudanese brother. So when a Black person says, "Hey, let's preserve our culture," I have no problem with Italians or Irish people or anyone else saying, "Let's preserve our culture." But when we don't talk about ethnicity, but actual race, and when white people say, "Let's preserve whiteness," it's an exclusionary practice. It's about preserving laws and practices and tactics that do harm to other people. A Black power movement was about opening stores and building businesses. A white power movement was a white power. That's the giga. A white power movement was about something very, 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 very different. A white power movement included lynchings and included Ku Klux Klan, etc. So let's not pretend that these are opposite sides of the same coin. When white people say, "Let's save our country," and even using the language of our country, when Black people built this thing, when you say that, you're talking about forcing people out of the country. You're talking about laws that discriminate. You're talking about doing harm to people. Let's not pretend these are the same thing, just like these GoFundMe campaigns are not the same thing. I'm okay if everybody gets out of the GoFundMe industrial complex. I'd love that. But let's not pretend that supporting someone for a fair trial is the same thing as supporting a grown white woman berating and calling the N-word to a 5-year-old autistic Black child. And the fact that everyone in here can't be unanimous in condemning that says exactly how they're not the same.
I totally agree.
He's totally right. They're definitely not the same thing, because if that would have happened in reverse, if a Black man or Black woman would have called a 5-year-old autistic white kid cracker, we wouldn't be talking about this, because that happens all the damn time. This is the problem. You get racism in a certain direction, and it's just unfettered, unchecked. And when it goes in the other direction, shamed into oblivion, oppression. That's going to boil over one day. This guy, right, talking about, oh, but the Black Power movement was something totally different. Framing it as it's all such a good thing. It's not exclusionary. It's about black business and blah. Hang on, my guy. Can't you see the place of arrogance that you're coming from, the place of bias that you're coming from, right? The white power movement isn't about that. Sure, you could make the argument that it used to be about that, right? And it was left unfettered, unchecked, and it evolved into something different. This is why we see a problem with black supremacy, for goodness sakes, because if it's left unfettered, unchecked, it will fester into something very, very nasty, and we see that, and we're trying to stop that. We need to stop that. My guy doesn't understand what is going on with this. He doesn't realize his own very, very biased and arrogant nature when it comes to this, trying to frame his own movement as something very different. Oh, we're just peaceful. It's a kumbaya-ness over here. No, I'm sorry, my guy. I'm sorry, dude. You need to sit down and shut up with that. Step outside of yourself for a second and see where you're coming from. That, hang on, that movement is also exclusionary. As a matter of fact, the DEI, all that nonsense, it's all exclusionary of white people. I mean, there's books out there called Anti-White and all this other nonsense, or white fragility. Like, what? Like, if I were to write a book called Black Fragility, you think that would go over very well? And this is a problem. I will get called a racist for that statement. Well, what's her name? I forget her name. Angela something, I believe. I can't remember. I'm sorry, right off the top. Does she get called a black supremacist? No, because she's white. Fascinating, isn't it? So, well, we need to get a black author to make black fragility, if you will. All right, this isn't the equal application of morality all the way across the board. I think that's a problem in this country. It is a very big problem in this country. It's being allowed to fester, and a lot of people, we're finally starting to see some pushback against this. Is it in the right direction? No. But I think more talk like what I'm doing, I feel like I'm in the right position here, that we need to push back against that and stay away from doing it ourselves. What we need to do is cut out, ostracize white supremacy while at the same time ostracizing black supremacy, ostracizing any of this race-baity nonsense. We need to all be on equal footing. We need to come to the understanding that skin color doesn't matter whatsoever. We can dip off into statistics. Oh, well, black people commit more crime and blah, blah, blah. Who cares, right? It's not about the group. It's about the individual. That's what it should be about these days. It should be about an individual committed crime. When you break it down to individual statistics, certain people commit more crimes. White people commit crimes. Everybody, every group, right? It's all about the individuals. This is what we need to get to. We need to stop looking at race as some sort of metric by what we compare society to. That's ridiculous in my opinion. And it should be just deleted outright. And a lot of people make the argument, and I can't stand that argument, wow, we need to make up for past discrimination with discrimination. Well, I'm sorry. When you get discrimination, it's just going to go in the other direction, my guy. Then you're going to get some sort of civil rights movement for white people. It'll be the same sort of thing going on, and it's just going to be in the opposite direction. It's not going to fix the problem. It's not going to fix discrimination. We have to just stop discriminating. Just completely. Stop looking at everything through the lens of race. Just eliminate that outright. But conveying that idea to people, right? Getting them out of their bias, getting them out of their history of thinking through that lens, that's not an easy thing to do. So what we need to do is our next generations, the generation after that, just stop talking about race. Once again, that's my fix. It may be a bit naive. Comment down below. But to fix racism is just stop talking about it. Eventually, our children, maybe their children's children, won't even think about it, for goodness sakes, if it's not discussed at all. We all just coexist on this planet as equals, or we don't. Which do you guys want to choose? I choose let's all coexist as equals on this planet, right? We can look through history. I'm not trying to deny any history. That history needs to be taught. Why? Because we learn from our history. That history definitely needs to be taught. I'm not saying to not teach that. I am just saying, by the metrics of these days, let's not discuss race in that context. In other words, as I'm a white person and whites need to stick together or anything like that. No, let's not do that at all. Let's teach our children that we are created equal and we are equals as far as how we treat each other, respect, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on. We should all respect each other the same, right? And they say respect is earned, right? But that's not necessarily the case, because we should give, a certain amount of respect to anybody regardless. Just like anybody, just strangers we don't know, they get a certain amount of respect just right off the jump. Now, where that respect goes after that depends on the relationship between you and that person. It shouldn't have anything to do with race, right? We should all have some level of given respect, right? Like you don't just bump into people on the sidewalk. That type of respect. If somebody asks you a question, at least respect them enough to give some sort of response. You don't just ignore people, for goodness sakes. Right? Now, your respect can definitely go down depending on the relationship between you, right? But we should all start with a place of just general respect for other human beings. That's my opinion on this. What's y'all's opinion on this? Y'all let me know down in the comments section. But I think that's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. Look, you guys, don't forget to smash that like button for me. Leave your comments down below. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. We need to get the message out there, y'all. Seriously, get the message out there that we need to stop viewing things through the lens of race, because we are all created equal. And just because you have a specific melanin count in your skin does not mean that you're any different than anybody else, right? The way I view that, it's like a color of a car, right? The guts, they're all the same. The paint, that's a little bit different, but how does that matter? Let me know down in the comments. That's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.